Well, my name's Stanley Walter Middleton, known as Stan. I was born on the 10th of December 1945 in Mildura, Victoria. I was one of 7 children, number 3. 3 boys first, 3 girls and another boy. I grew up on a fruit block first at Irupal, just out of Mildura, till I was about 8. Then the family moved to another fruit block at Cardross, which is near Redcliffe and about 10 miles from Mildura. Then I went to the Mildura South Schools primary state school first, and then moved to the Cardross state school when I was in grade 3 or 4, I think. And then after primary school, I went to the Mildura Technical School till year 10, and when I joined the ANZ Bank in Mildura. Growing up, I loved playing sport, and I started in the Cubs and Scouts, but played tennis for Cardross under 16s, played cricket for Cardross under 16s in A grade later. I played football for Irupal through all grades, and eventually playing a few games in the seniors before I was transferred in the bank for Mildura. When I was captain of the Cardross under 16 team, at cricket, 6 of us served in Vietnam out of the one team and played at the one time. Everyone between 11 and 16 had to play to make up a team. So I think we've got a record there that no cricket team in Australia could meet. You might have a club that might have had 6, but never 6 in the one team. 2 of them have since died, one suicided and one killed in an accident, but I'm in contact with the other 4. When playing for Cardross A grade, I was wicketkeeper at 14 for the A grade. I'd play the under 16s in the morning and A grade in the afternoon. Not a lot of people know that me and Dad played for Cardross. We opened the batting together. It was me and Dad, not Jarvid, me and Dad, as most people would think. So it's a bit of a joke we have going, me and Dad. I also wicket-kept for a young Philip Crump, who's world famous and a legend in speedway racing in Australia and around the world, who went on to captain Australia in Test series, but at speedway racing. He captained the Australian 1984, I think, a team that won the World Championship, and his son's won 3 World Championships since. So, and I played a lot of cricket with Philip's father, who was, before Phil was just sneaking into the team when I was about to get transferred to Stool. So I've wicket-kept to an Australian captain. He was a promising slow bowler before he concentrated on speedway racing. So our little place called Cardross is, we batted above our weight, we reckon. I was also part of a unique cricket experience in that when I was about 13, one fella got 6 successive wickets and 6 successive balls, and it went around the world famous then, because I don't think it had ever been heard of before. And I was victim number 4. So I always told the bowler that if it hadn't been for me, he wouldn't have been world famous, because if I had stayed in, he would have just had an ordinary hat-trick. So, but instead he got 6 wickets. He died about 2 years ago, and they talked about that and me at the funeral too. But I loved playing basketball, cricket, played tennis for Cardross, juniors, basketball. So any sport I just loved playing. So I lived for sport. But at 16 I joined the ANZ Bank and stayed in Mildura till I was 19 and a half before I was transferred to Stawell in the bank. And while I was at Stawell, I actually played cricket with Greg Perry, who's Vietnam veteran and Essendon footballer, played 60 odd games in the ruck for Essendon. So I was his wicket keeper and he was a tearaway opening fast bowler. But we keep in contact all the time now, Greg and I. Also when I was at Stawell, there's a bit of fun. I come into the bank at Stawell. You may not know, being a Queenslander, but the legendary John Kennedy Senior. He's coached Hawthorn for 3 premierships. His son and grandson have been star footballers. Anyway, he was up at Stawell as the Stawell Tech principal for a couple of years. So in 1 year he coached Hawthorn up from Stawell, but it became too hard. So he coached Stawell instead. So I arrived, the first day I arrived in the Stawell in the bank on crutches from playing footy. And John Kennedy Senior comes in and says, "Do you play footy, son?" I said, "Yes." So he come down and picked me up, signed me up, did all my paperwork. So I reckon not many people can claim to be signed personally by the late and great John Kennedy Senior. Anyway, that's another side thing. Well, I got called up after 12 months in Stawell. I went to Puckapunyal in 5th intake, 1966, 13th of July, freezing cold day. I flew down from Mildura to Melbourne, then went up by bus to Puckapunyal, and then did 3 months there. Then corps training at Bonagilla. We were in some of the huts that were used for the migrant centre there. So I did the corps training there. Then got posted to Bandiana, 2 COD, Composite Ordnance Depot, or 1 COD, I should say. And while I was there, I got sent to Canungra for 3 weeks jungle training, and that was the hardest 3 weeks of my life. I'm still recovering. Got holes in my stomach from the barbed wire and everything, I reckon. And I went there unfit because I'd had a hernia operation and I'd been on light duty, so I went to Canungra totally unfit, and it was murder. I don't know how I survived it all, and I'm still recovering. Anyway, and then in August 67 I was sent to Vietnam in what was 2 Composite Ordnance Depot. That's where we supply everything for all the units, from spare parts, clothes, ammunition, you name it, we supplied everything. And I served there till May 1968. But I had a good trip to Vietnam. A group of us got loaded at Sydney, where we flew to Brisbane, then on to Manila. When we got to Manila, there was 15 of us, for some reason, got offloaded, and the rest went on to Saigon. So I don't know what the reason was, but there was only 2 with me that from my unit, and they went on to Saigon. Anyway, the other 15 of us got sent to the Clark Air Base. We went on a wild trip through Manila. Bus drivers stopped at all these bars, and everyone was rotten drunk by the time they got to bloody Clark Air Base. And Clark Air Base didn't know anything about us. So I found a letter years later which supported what I've been telling. We had to pay for accommodation, pay for meals, and organise our own travel to Saigon. So eventually we got our flight from America. I flew in with a plane load of Yanks. 15 of us joined these Yanks coming from direct from America. So I went to Vietnam in an unusual way, then arrive at Saigon and eventually turn up on my unit 3 days after the other fellas, and I was in trouble because one of them was a practical joker, and he told them I'd gone AWOL on the way over because they wanted to know where I was. It just doesn't make sense, but I'm glad we went that way. It makes a good story. So I had a bit of explaining to do, trying to get out of why I turned up 3 days after me mates. But anyway, so that was all right. In Vietnam, we were pretty safe. We're down the back beach in Vung Tau. We used to do guard duties and patrols around our area. We're on the end of the camp, so if ever they're going to be attacked, our camp was first. You sit out in the sand hills at night. They'd lock you out of the barbed wire. You couldn't get back in, but you sit out there at night and do 2 hours on, 4 hours, and you're resting and whatever. But it was a bit scary, but we survived it. Then Tet Offensive come in 1968, which was the worst fighting in Vietnam. So all the guards got doubled, the pickets got doubled, everything else. So things got heated up. I actually just got back from R&R leave in Bangkok and got out of Saigon 24 hours before they blew up the airbase, put the airbase out of action for 4 days. I just got out of that in time. Got back to Vung Tau. But earlier than that, in December 1967, me and another fella, Phil Potter, took a truck up the Saigon River, just the two of us. We put it on a boat and we had to take supplies to certain points of Australians in Saigon and also pick up stuff in Saigon to bring back to Vung Tau. So it was just the two of us when you think about it. We didn't have any Melways, we didn't have any GPS. I don't know how we found our way around, to be honest. But it was a fascinating few days anyway. So I'm glad we did it, but at the time we're thinking we're a bit stupid coming up here. So, but anyway, it was interesting. So, and from Vung Tau it takes about 8 hours. In those days you do 1 hour and 40 minutes by hydrofoil now. So we went up the river and we were relaxing on top of the truck when someone had a pot shot at us, snipers, so we thought we'd better get down from that. Then in Saigon, Phil was the truck driver, I was his shotgun escort, and Saigon had never seen road rage before, but Phil introduced it. Phil was a racing driver, I believe. He raced cars, so he certainly raced trucks in Saigon, and he used to complain they were all driving on the wrong side of the road, because they drive on the other side of the road to us. We had 5 accidents in Saigon, never stopped for any of them because you never know what's going to happen. So Phil introduced road rage to Saigon. So that was, and then while we were in Saigon, we one night we had to spend a few days delivering goods around and picking up stuff all over Saigon. And one night some American MPs invited us to come on their tour of duty at night. They said they'd show us Saigon by night. So stupid us said, yes, that's a good idea. So anyway, well, they pick us up and they said, can you use the M60 machine gun? We said, yes. So we got set up behind the M60 machine gun as they toured the streets of Saigon. When any of us was in any trouble, us silly buggers were going to be the first ones aimed at. Anyway, we somehow got through the night. Then on the last night in Saigon, we had to take we stayed at a hotel for a few nights, the Canberra BEQ they called it. But on the last night we had to take the truck back to the wharves and put it on a boat to go back to Vung Tau at dawn, leave at dawn. They warned us down the wharves that we're going to be attacked that night, which turned out correct. So all night we sat up there watching flares and tracer bullets and choppers trying to be shot down and everything else. So mate Phil likes a beer. So he goes and breaks into the American beer on the wharfs, hot American beer. It tasted terrible. But Phil's story was, he said, we mightn't be in the morning, so we may as well have a drink before we go. So we sat up watching the fireworks display, couldn't do anything. And anyway, we survived the night, then headed back to Vung Tau. That was probably my most interesting few days in Vietnam, that trip with Phil. And when I was going home, they had a follow-up to Tet, and we lost a day getting out to going home because they attacked the airport at Saigon again. They gave me a farewell party actually, but I didn't want to admit that. So they'd hit the control tower, the smoke going all around the airport. So eventually when we flew out, Qantas picked us up and I reckon they did the steepest takeoff you've probably ever seen. So, but we lost a day getting out because that's what's happening there. And I think 3 Australian journalists were murdered that day or the day before in Saigon by the Viet Cong. And they said they were pressed, but the Viet Cong didn't care and just shot them all. So you'll find that in the history somewhere. But that's either 6th, 7th or 8th of May around about. Years later, I was working in the ANZ Bank, and this woman come in the bank every day, and she got talking one day, and she said her husband had done national service, and I said I had to too. So we got talking. He said he went to Vietnam. I said so did I. She said he went in August 1967. I said so did I. By this time she's starting to get a bit suspicious about me. Then she said he went on August the 23rd, 1967. I said so did I. Then she said he went on some wild trip to the Manila, to the Philippines, to Clark Air Base. And I said so did I. And anyway, we get talking to her, and she said, by this time she thinks I'm probably just saying yes to everything she said. Anyway, she said he come back in May 1968, and I said so did I. She said he lost the day getting out. I said so did I. And she said Saigon Tonsanut was under attack when we're leaving. I said yeah. She said he got into Melbourne at 3 a.m. in the pouring rain. I said so did I. So she's thinking, bloody, he just says yes to everything I say. Anyway, years later, I went and met him and all fitted. Years later, I found this letter, listed the 15 names. His name was on it and my name. So I went round to visit them. I said, you didn't believe a word I said, did you? But here's their names on that list. So we went to Vietnam together, come back together, different units, didn't know each other. But just over the counter in the bank, talking, unbelievable. Out of 15 people in Australia, her husband was one of them. We played football over there. The footy comp started by a fellow called John Heaney. Ivor had to do penalties for something he was in trouble for. He then got the option by his CEO, either organise a footy game or get locked up or whatever. So he chose the football game. So they played a footy game in Middleton. That was probably 1966. But by 1967, they organised full-scale competition called the Vietnam Football League, which is the VFL. We all claim we're VFL players, even if it's not the Victorian Football League. So we played probably about 6 units, and they used to vary. They have 2 seasons a year, a summer season and a winter season. Well, not that it made much difference over there, it was always bloody hot. So we had our unit, there was engineers, service corps, the RAAF, the Air Force. So it was up to around 6 units mostly, and some units drop in and some would come and go. We went for the next till 1971. I started in 1967, and most years there was 2 seasons a year, and I've done the history of that and provided. You've seen some of the stuff I sent you.
Absolutely.
And the AFL are very interested in what I produced. They're very impressed. So I played in late 67. I played in the 68 season. I went home just before the grand final because I was due to be discharged. But it was highly competitive. Units didn't like losing to other units. And our side had some brilliant players over the time. I mean, Wayne Closter, who played for Geelong, was after me, but he played there. There's a fellow called Bob McKenna, never played league football, but should have. Brilliant footballer. He played district cricket for South Melbourne, actually, down here, and he also represented New Guinea when he was working up there against the Australian Test team and made 46 against them, so he could play. So, But we had a lot of good players, and later on in our unit, Greg Perry wasn't in our unit, but he was in 106. He played in the competition. There was a fellow called Billy Thompson who played for Essendon. Then he played in the VFA and won the best and fairest Liston trophy one year. But Billy was a top footballer. Should have played a lot more league football, but I think Vietnam taught him to drink more. So he didn't like the coaching methods when he came back from Vietnam. There was another fella from South Australia who played about 10 or 11 state games for South Australia, who played in the competition, Rodney Pope. He's in the Hall of Fame in South Australia. A nice bloke, I've got to know him since. He played in the competition. So Glenn James, the umpire, which I was telling them before that Glenn is an Aboriginal umpire, brilliant umpire, umpired 2 grand finals, but sadly at the moment he's got Alzheimer's bad. I spent about 3 hours, my wife and I, with him and his partner 2 weeks ago, and I don't think he really knew me, but he's cheerful, but his memory's shot, which is sad. But he was a top umpire, but he played in the competition over there, and did I tell you the story about him in the grand final over there? Ordnance, this is after I'd gone home in 1969 grand final, or 1970, might have been 1970, one or the other. Anyway, 69 I think. So the 17 construction engineers decided the only way they could win the game was take out Wayne Closter of the Geelong Star. So Glenn got the job, and he's a famous umpire. No one would ever think he'd hit anyone. And at the opening bounce, he took out Closter at the opening bounce, knocked him rotten. And I know Wayne pretty well, and Wayne's told me, he said, for 3 quarters I was useless. The scores were level at 3/4 time. I came good and kicked 5 goals in the last quarter, we won. Anyway, Wayne said years later, Glenn said to him, he said, I'm sorry about what I did to you in Vietnam. Wayne said, that's all right. I'm sorry because I didn't hit you hard enough. You come good. So Glenn's got had a great sense of humour. He was great with the players on the ground. They'd give it to him, but he'd give it back to them. So that's a bit of a story, and a few people laughed because one of the footballers that you wouldn't know, but he played for Essendon and a couple of clubs. I met him one day and I was telling him about Glenn James and the Wayne Closter, and I didn't know he was a mate of Glenn. And they taught together at the Box Hill TAFE in Melbourne. And this Cameron Clayton, who's a pretty tough footballer he was, he said, Beauty, I've got something on him at last. Then he said, I'm going to dinner with him tomorrow night, because I didn't even know he knew him. So I saw him a few days later, and he said, he had a grin for me to hear. The story is right. So there's some funny stories of the football over there. Other times teams have gone to play there, and there's been barbed wire all over the ground. There's all sorts of things, but the grand finals, a lot of people used to turn up and watch. So I tell all the fellas that knew that the reason we played football was the Viet Cong liked coming to watch and took the pressure off you, because they don't like the fact we played football. Graham Corns, who used to coach Adelaide Crows, he's a Vietnam vet, and I sent him the story, all the stuff on the footy I did, and he came very impressed by it. He said, lucky us grunts couldn't play you down there, we would have thrashed you. I said, yeah, I know that, but I'm not going to tell anyone. So the footy competition was a real serious thing over there, and it was great for morale. I mean, it was a Sunday morning thing, and everyone looked forward to it, and the competition to get a game it was pretty tough too. I was scraping the team just because there were so many good footballers, and Western Australians could play, and you got South Australians and Victorians and Tasmanians in the unit, when a lot of them could play footy as particularly the national servicemen. I've been an Essendon supporter since I was a little kid. Well, you know who John Coleman is. Absolute legend. He kicked 12 goals in his first game of league football at 20-year-old. And he kicked 100 goals in his first year and won a premiership in his first year. Then he did his knee when he was only about 24, so he only ever played 97 games. A brilliant footballer. But anyway, the reason I follow Essendon is my father we used to go to football when I was a kid up at Mildura. My father followed Ripple, that's who I played for later. And as soon as we got home, he wanted the radio, wanted to find out how many goals John Coleman kicked. So I thought he was a Essendon supporter. So me and my brother Des, we followed Essendon. Then years later, we find out our uncle played for St Kilda, but they were down the bottom, so Dad barracked for them, but he didn't let on. so my connection with Essendon, I've never played foot. I've always been a member since when I come back from Vietnam, I got posted to Melbourne in the bank, and then I started going to the football in Melbourne and going to Essendon games all the time. So I've been an Essendon supporter ever since, but never played with them. But I've been mates with Greg Perry and others, and because of the work I've done on the Vietnam football, I got invited with all the players that served in Vietnam to the Crown Casino one year. I was the odd one out, but Sin and my wife and I were invited as guests, and it was really good. So, but cricket. In Vietnam, we had the women labourers that worked for us lay us a concrete cricket pitch. So it was probably at that stage the only cricket pitch in the world built by women. So we used to play other units, and we had a definite home ground advantage because our pitch, our ground in the bloody sand of Vung Tau. So I just wonder now that I was wicketkeeper and opening back for the unit, but I'm just wondering now whether that qualifies me as an international cricketer. The 1967-8 tour of Vietnam. But again, we had some good cricketers in the sides over there as well, as you can imagine. So, but with the connection, I'll come back to the family in that minute. Yeah. With the connection of Vietnam Swans, who are mainly expats, but they've got a lot of Vietnamese kids playing with them now. They started playing an Anzac friendship game in Vung Tau in 2010, and I read about it somewhere in the paper, and I realised they're playing on the ground where we played most of our games of footy in Vietnam. So I worked out how I could track down the president of the Vietnam Swans, Phil Johns, and I contacted him and said, Phil, do you know you played on our old footy ground in Vietnam? He said, I didn't even know you played football during the war. So we then, from that moment on, created a bond between the vets that played footy in Vietnam and the Vietnam Swans, and they adopted a lot of our histories all on their website, and we've become very close. And I've been over there twice. They've named a the gala dinner guest speaker speech after me. They could call it the Middleton Address, and I've done it twice myself. But one year, Alex Jesselenko, the great Jezza, did my speech. So I've told Jezza I've made him famous. I told him and Barry Davis one day, Barry Davis just recently died, but I told him one day, I said, Jez, you thought you made me famous, but I reckon I made you famous, and said that roared laughing. So, but anyway, so we developed that bond between us and the Vietnam Swans, which is very strong between a lot of the veterans now, and they love it, the fact that they got our history, because they just had no idea we played footy in Vietnam as an organised competition. And now that they also made me a life member in 2019, which is nice, great honour. So anyway, when I got back to Vietnam, I went to work at East Brunswick in ANZ Bank, and there was a Carlton footballer there, Ian Robertson, He later on did commentating, a great, beautiful drop kick, wasn't he? Beautiful, lovely footballer. So he took me down to Carlton. I met Ron Barassi, all the players, and Barassi sat down and had a talk with us for about half an hour. Barassi actually said, I was thinking of taking a footy team, the Carlton, to Vietnam to entertain the troops. And I said, well, that'd be no good. It'd be a bit embarrassing if 2AOD beat you. but he was serious about it. But I don't think the club would have went along with that. And the funny thing, another story, they did a documentary called The Galahs, which Harry Beitzel took over to play the Irish at Irish football and beat them at their top competition. But on the way over, they flew via Saigon to refuel in 1967. God knows why they were going to Saigon in the middle of the war. But anyway, John Nichols, Carlton legend, ex-coach, he started taking photos at the airport, and he got his camera confiscated at gunpoint. So they had no photos of the airport. So they go onto the website, through the internet, and they found my photo site and decided they needed some photos for the film on Saigon, the airport. So they've used two of my photos in the documentary. So I got invited along as a guest to the premiere, which is good. I met all the players, Barassi again, all these old stars, and Jezza was there. I'd met Jezza before that, but Jezza, that's when I told him that I made him famous. So we had a great, I took a mate with me. I just had my prostate removed, and I wasn't too fit to go, and they let me bring a carer along, which was good. He loved it too. He's a mad fanatic, a football follower, so another vet. So we had a great day at that. That was just another interesting sidekick. And getting back to Ian Robertson, at Carlton, he was wonderful with me because he's a country boy too. And I was a bit lost when I come back to, I'd never lived in Melbourne before, when I come back from Vietnam, and he was good to work with, and he'd take me down to Carlton. I was a bit overwhelmed by Wes Lofts and bloody Nichols and Jezzelenko and Barassi, but it was good, really good. In fact, I've just made contact with him the other day, and I've got to ring him back. He's rung me, and I was tied up with something, so I've got to ring him back. So I'll test his memory out now, so after all these years. But he commentated the footy for a long while. He was very good at it, I reckon. So I'll have to find out why he gave it up. So, but anyway, so that's a bit of the footy side. So when I went to Vietnam, I was sort of going out for a girl that was later to become my wife. When I come back, 12 months after I got back, we got married. We had three daughters. We got three daughters, Michelle, Joanne and Elise, all about 3 years between them. But my wife was diagnosed with melanoma in the 1980s, and despite operations and treatment, and nothing worked. And in 1991 she died at 46, and I had three daughters at that age, 10, 14 and 17, very difficult age. So that was pretty tough going. Bringing the football back into it, we were good friends with, my wife was very good friends with Wayne Schimmelbusch's wife, and she organised all the support and everything we needed for meals, this, that. She was wonderful. And my youngest daughter and their oldest daughter went through primary school and high school together, and they're still close friends to this day. So, so that was very tough. I can remember taking the two Elises to the footy out when Wayne was coaching North Melbourne, and all these people go and cook at Wayne, and we all stand there in the crowd not saying a word, letting on I've got his daughter with me. But yeah, so it was a very tough time, and then we had, I met up with a couple other women, which turned out to be nightmares. You don't ever meet a woman that doesn't want your kids around. Oh, So two, one after another, turned out to be the same, and some things happened which were awful, but I won't go into that. But it's, certain people should be in jail over the first woman's sons and friends. It's awful, awful. But so we've had a very difficult time dealing with that. And then I was starting to go around the bend, so I decided, it was one of the vets from Perth coming over. Ken Judge's cousin Kevin was in my unit in Vietnam. Ken died at 57, very sad, on his birthday. A lovely bloke, I've met him a few times. And anyway, Kevin was coming over and I said, I'll try and get some of our footy team together. I'm thinking maybe I can find 3 or 4 because I didn't know where any of them were. Anyway, within 6 weeks, we had about 60 people turn up. We had the most wonderful reunion. It was all at my place, and people were staying in our house, people were staying in nearby motels, but it was just like yesterday. People come in, they're getting stuck into each other as they were in Vietnam. Nothing had changed. It was brilliant, brilliant. So, and we had Twiggy Dunn lived next door to me, so I said, Twiggy, we're going to make a lot of noise, you better come over and join us. So I said, bring Max Richardson with him, another Collingwood captain. So we made him do a bit on the 77 drawn grand final. So Twiggy's saying he was 45 metres out and Max says you were 15 metres out when he kicked the goal that drew the game. And then Twiggy said, Max is telling me to kick a drop punt. I've never kicked a drop punt in life, and not starting there, but they did it brilliantly, really good skit, and it was really nice. So that started from then, reunions, which I've been involved in nearly every one since. So, and I've set up a database for our unit for all the years, not just my year, and also set up one for Sin's unit, my wife Sin, who I met Sin in 2002 when we went back to Vietnam. What happened is the first reunion we had in 1998 triggered the thought of going back to Vietnam. And so I thought if we go back to Vietnam, it'd be nice to find some of our Vietnamese employees. We had no idea where to start. So I wrote letters to this address I had for one of the girls that worked for me, and nothing. And I didn't have any success there at first. Then I thought, she's a Catholic. I'll go to the Catholic Church in Vietnam. And they're based in Hue, which is a long way away, and I went to them and they couldn't help. So then I had one last chance. I'll go to the Telstra and see if they contact Saigon Exchange to see if I give them a name.
Good, thank you.
If I give them a name, could they give us a phone number if possible, bearing in mind she may have escaped the country, she may be dead, she probably hasn't got the phone on, and she's married, she might have it in her husband's name. So the odds of finding it were millions to 1. So anyway, so I ring Telstra and I thought they'd tell me to get lost, but they didn't. They went to Saigon Exchange and I thought they'd tell us to get lost, but they didn't. Anyway, after a little while they come back and give me a number. Again, it could be anyone because a lot of the Vietnamese names are very similar. So, and all the women's middle names are THI, means female, and that's changing now. But all the male middle names is VAN. So, and the surnames are that similar, common in the same ones in Vietnam. Anyway, I get given this phone number and I thought, still Buckley's hope of being the right one. Anyway, I ring the number and this woman answers the phone and I said, is that you, Tom? Thom, which again could be anyone. She said yes. I said, did you work for the Australians? And of course I didn't know she'd speak English anyway. And she said no. Then she comes back and says, but a long time ago. And then I'm trying to, finally gets through to who I am. And she says, I'm so happy I'm drunk. So she remembered a bit of English. So then I'm trying to get her address off her. She kept giving me the phone number, which I already had. Eventually got the address. So anyway, she used to write letters to me and my late wife before 1975. Then, because of the communists took over, you never heard anything. So I sent her copies of some of the letters. I still had photocopied them and sent them to her. Anyway, and I told her we were coming to Vietnam in 6 weeks, about 15 of us, a few vets and partners, and we'd love to catch up with some of you. Anyway, so she takes these letters when she gets them around to Sin, this girl Sin who worked at the Badco Club in the orderly room and did translating, typing, all sorts of things. And now my wife, Sin, says to her, I wrote all these letters for you. Sin was writing the letters for Tom to me and my wife. My daughters think it's hilarious. Their stepmother in future was writing to their mother and me. So anyway, so we go to Vietnam and we do a tour, but we stayed in Vung Tau for a couple of days. And we put on a dinner for the number that were there. It wasn't a lot, but we had about 10 all up because they found a few for us. And Sen got up and translated all the Vietnamese speeches and then transferred all our speeches back to Vietnamese, and she hadn't spoken English for 27 years. So I was impressed. So the partner I was with then was giving me a hard time with my kids, so I broke up with her. So anyway, the next year I go back and the romance started, and I brought her out for a 6 months holiday, and we wanted to be sure that my girls got on well with her, and they did. They liked her, and so Sen, she had 7 children. She lost one when they got sent up the bush in terrible conditions by the communists to live. She had to build a house, and she said it was like a chicken's pen. But one of the kids died in her arms, terrible, she said. So anyway, I brought her out for holiday in 2004, and we got married in 2005. We brought her youngest son out, which was good because he was under 18. There's only one we could bring out. And another daughter come out later through marrying and so on. So she got 2 kids in Australia and 4 in Vietnam. And she got 2 grandkids here and about 10 or 12 in Vietnam. Plus my 3 daughters with another 4 grandkids. So, but we've never had a problem between either families. It's been wonderful. We've been very lucky. That's not always the case, as you probably know. So that's how I got to know Sin. So I tell Sin she's made me famous since I met her, because she was involved in Operation Baby Lift. You've heard of that? Where a plane crashed in Vietnam and half the babies, and they're trying to get out before the communists took over, died, and a lot of the carers, and a lot survived. She was working at a nursery in Saigon, looking after a lot of the babies that went on the plane, and also she knew a lot of the carers that got killed as well. So it was pretty emotional time. So that's been a story that's gone on for years, and now, in fact, Sin and I have helped Vietnamese trying to come out as baby lift child kids, trying to track down their birth parents in Vietnam. It's not easy, but we've had a bit of success, but not a lot. But it's pretty hard. But it's another long story that my kids, 3 of them got married, one's divorced, but the other 2 are still married. All the girls are very close, the whole 3 of them, which is good, and they're very close to Sin too. So we're very lucky. And in the meantime, after that first trip to Vietnam in 2002, people started donating money, so I sort of organised it so we could help the ones we found, and we found a lot more that worked for us after. We also found some that escaped the country, lived in Melbourne. I trucked down a young boy that worked for me to Denver, Colorado. Unbelievable. I rang him up at 4 a.m. I didn't know what time it was in Denver. Got him out of bed and he couldn't believe it, because he was like our unit mascot, and he couldn't believe it. And last year he came out and He's got a sister in Adelaide, but he stayed with Sin and I for 3 weeks. We had his nickname was Buck. So we had 3 Bucks parties for him in Australia because all the vets in my unit loved him. He was like, so I had one at Noble Park, one in the city so the country boys could come down and see him. We had one in Brisbane because the one's up in there. So he's a legend in his own right. But we've raised now over $150,000 to help them, and they get every cent. And we usually, as well as sending money over, when we have one of the tours, I've had organised big tours in 11, 13, 15, 17 and 19, and one starting in 2 weeks. About 30 or 40 people go to Vietnam with us for a month or so. But we have a dinner in Vung Tau and invite all our Vietnamese employees we found as our guests. And we hand them envelopes of cash. We introduce them one by one on the stage, and in case the people on the tour knew them. In lots of cases, there have been ones that remembered ones they worked for, and it was really good. It's created a bond between old friends. But I've just put out an email last week to all the vets and that to raise some more money before we go. I've had about 5,000 in the kitty I've raised over the last couple of years. I've got about 4,000 in already, unbelievable. So we've got a heap of money to take over to Vietnam, and I'll spread it amongst all our group that are going. So if one gets robbed, we don't lose much. If I carry the lot and I get robbed, we do the lot. So, but we'll hand that out at our dinner in Vung Tau to them. It's at the end of our tour, which will be good. So, and on the tour we've got Peter Badco, Victoria Cross. One of his daughters are coming on tour. So she's never been to Vietnam, and we're going to take her to where her father was killed, up near Way, and I've done a fair bit of research on that, and we're going to make sure we go to the spot exactly where and everything else. And there's a shrine up there for him and some of the locals, not many people know about, which we're going to visit as well. But I've done a fair bit of work there, and we're going to include that in our tour. I've got awarded the OAM in Australia Day 2019. It was they said in the paper for service to veterans, but they've told me separately that it's more than that. It's more like things I've been involved in, Water Safety Vietnam. You know Neil Roberts, Brownlow medalist? He's become a good mate because we were involved together in Water Safety Vietnam. And I've been very involved in the committee there. We send people over, raise money to help train trainers and kids in Vietnam, because a lot drown because they fall in the water, don't know what to do. So, and also for the work I've done to raise money for all our Vietnamese employees. I do a lot of work not at the RSL or the pension centres with veterans and help them, direct them to the right people when they need help. I also do a lot of work in getting the slides off veterans and work on them. And I've got a site where I put up albums in veterans' names and everything else in their Vietnam slides and things. And amongst other things, helping to do a baby lift. Kids also have helped raise a lot of money for orphanage, disabled orphanage in Vietnam. So there's a string of things but it was put up, I found out later, by a couple of the vets who knew exactly what I do, where a lot of people probably have no idea what I do. So it was a great honour. So, absolutely. And it was good to meet the governor at the time in Victoria, who's an Essendon supporter, used to be on the Essendon committee, I think. So when she pinned them on, I said, "Go Bombers," she had a big smile on her face. So that was nice. So, well, treat people as you want to be treated yourself. Help people where you can. Be supportive to people who need support. Make the most of life where you can. Life's full of ups and downs, as I've experienced. But life's good. So, and I love doing all the old photos of veterans on work. I got that far behind them, but I love working on them and then putting them up, and I love working on that, and so there's never enough hours in the day. I could do another 48 hours a day, but I enjoy what I do. It's not work, it's time, put it that way. And I love cleaning up slides. I've become very skillful at making ordinary photos look good. So I love doing that, but and my kids love our involvement with the vets. I organise 100 seats at Anzac Day through the AFL. No one else can get guest tickets that day, but I can. And vets come from all over Australia and family, and we all get together at the footy after the march and have a great day. And as I tell everyone, it doesn't matter who wins on Anzac Day, as long as it's not Collingwood. You agree?